Huddled in a wind-swept tent in the high lofts of the Citadel, an old snail laments a hindered scheme. Above him looms the presence of the pale god he loathes, under which he and his family have disguised themselves for years uncounted. But in the midst of his sulking, the toll of a great bell shakes him from his thoughts. Knowing his time of peace and solitude is over, he rushes out to belittle the bell ringer and finds a god. Of sorts. She does not carry the power of the pale ones, but this old bug, not quite pale, not quite weaver, does not act like her kin. A sliver of curiosity takes him as he watches the old bug care and defend the helpless pilgrims who make their way to his shrine. Could she be what his family has sought? Convinced that she is more than weaver or god, he finally offers her a plan, a shrouded version of his family's scheme. To his delight, she accepts, and with his help ascends to the chambers of the Pale Monarch, ready to snare the slumbering god. But the shaman has not told her everything, and she will discover his family's fixations in that dark, depthless substance churning deep beneath Pharloom. Though long unseen by snail or sapient bug, the void, that twisted, liquid nothing, has controlled Pharloom far longer than the Pale Monarch. For it does not merely exist in the bottom of Pharloom. It was its very foundation. Hello, I'm Mary, a writer and professional archivist, and welcome to the first part of my series on Pharloom's religious history. I love the world of Hollow Knight. The first game was my favorite game of all time until Silksong managed to dethrone it to second, which completely surprised me. Another surprise was how much I was invested in the world building of Silksong. I love worlds with plenty of mystery, which is one reason why I loved the first game. But when I saw that the artifacts had descriptions in Silksong, I flipped. I went full archivist mode, and the rest is history. Between several playthroughs and poring over pages of the game's text, I've slowly reconstructed what I believe to be the religious history of Pharloom. This is not to say that I am 100% correct, simply that I might have noticed some things that others have missed. So I'm going to share my findings in a 9-part series. I will cover the base game and save DLC content, including the Steel Clan and Plasmium-related discussions, for another time. As for my credentials, I have a Master's of Science in Library and Information Science, and have worked over a decade in special collections, archives, and museums. My specialty is cataloging and metadata. Basically, I analyze artifacts and documents, then compile information about their origins and history before making it available for patrons. Although I am currently unable to work due to progressed issues with Lyme disease, my skills tend to work their way into my hobbies and interests. If you've ever wondered how Scrounge, Cardinius, Lem, or Monomon might piece together their land's histories, this series might give you a little insight into what that could look like. Before I begin the history, I want to explain 2 core concepts I will be using to perform my analysis in this video. The first is found in the earliest parts of the Pilgrim's journey. Shortly after leaving Bone Bottom and passing through the Bone Gate, pilgrims are greeted by a great tablet that reads, "Pilgrim, you are blessed to walk the foundations of Pharloom. Humble yourself before the shells of those who gave their lives to hold our kingdom's weight." While the command functions as a religious prompt, it also offers us an important key in deciphering the history of the land, namely, that we can interpret some of the kingdom's chronology by its strata. Generally, that which is lower and deeper is older, and that which is higher and nearer is newer. While not true of all of Pharloom's geology, it is generally correct and can be used to identify some of the key ages in Pharloom's history. The second tool is something from the field of library and information science called provenance. In archiving and other memory institutions like museums and libraries, provenance is often a record of when and where a piece of information or artifact originated. It will include things such as who owned the piece, how it was made, where it was found, and how it got to where it is in the present time, etc. This is one way that memory institutions try to ensure the authenticity of their holdings. In-game, many of the relics, cylinders, and tools have provenance. Characters like Scrounge, Cardinius, Jubilana, and even Hornet provide us with details about the item's history. By paying attention to the provenance of artifacts, we can discover fascinating details that help us paint a richer picture of Pharloom's history. For example, when Hornet finds an arcane egg in the abyss, it is set on an elaborate pedestal in an ornate alcove. Although the only discernible words etched in the egg are no will, no self, shade, we can conclude that the egg was an artifact of particular reverence or importance due to its location and placement. Had we found it tossed aside somewhere in the abyss or shoved away on a shelf, we might think that the egg was more of a personal item, but its context seems to imply that it had a more public or communal use. Perhaps the egg served as a sort of religious text to those in the abyss. Although we may not know who wrote the egg or how it ended up on the platform, it does not mean that we cannot glean valuable information from the limited provenance we are given. By using these tools and more, I've reconstructed what I believe to be the 9 ages of Pharloom's religious history. This video will cover the first 2, which serve as the foundations for all that follows. It is important to note that there were historical ages before my timeline, as the fossils we will discuss are layered inside the corpses of even larger beings. For example, Bone Bottom's colossal cavern is the hollow of a shell, and the western slope of Mount Fay is actually a tunnel formed by the corpse of what may have been a massive worm. Even distant far fields is formed within a huge shell. However, in my analysis, I am beginning my timeline with the earliest written records and signs of religious civilization. So let us begin at the beginning. In the beginning, there was void. We don't know much about the void, except that it appears to be beneath at least 2 lands in the world, Pharloom and Hollownest, and both feature a layer of strata built upon the shells of giant snails. It is unclear which came first, the void or the snails, though they seem connected. We have small hints of their connection in Hollow Knight, as some of the shaman break into floaty black particles before being absorbed by the night. The shaman in Bilewater shows similar disintegration, and if we compare it to Hornet's crumbling corpse when it comes out of its cocoon, we can see that it is made of something more floaty and transparent than her corpse. Another example of their strange biology is the fact that they are gone after Hornet wakes from the red memory. If one strikes their shells, soul particles will drift out of them. It is unclear if this is because the Everbloom caused their bodies to change, or if these snails sacrificed themselves for soul along with the old hearts in order to send Hornet into the memory. The detailed lore connecting snails to void and soul could take up its own video, so for the sake of this series, we will simply settle on the fact that snails have an unusual biology compared to other bugs, and it behaves similarly to void particles. Beyond the presence of snail fossils, another similarity between the 2 lands are the existence of large towers in the abyss. In Hollownest, the Pale King built the lighthouse atop one of these broken towers. If you look to the right of it, there are several other old towers in the background, including another that is broken. In fact, the inside of the abyss that contains the husks of the vessels in Hollownest appear to be the inside of one of these towers. We see the same style of tower in Pharloom. Although we see them at a distance, they dwarf Hollownest's lighthouse in comparison. There was obviously some civilization in Pharloom, but the remnants of it are minimal. What we do have is evidence of the first religion in Pharloom, which I am calling the Void Cult. The Void Cult was practiced by those who existed above the abyss. It appears to be one of the most ancient religions in Pharloom, as the remnants of it are fading and crumbling. Its records, held in the arcane eggs, are worn and missing information. Religious verses on illuminated stone tablets, however, have survived, offering us a glimpse into their doctrine. In silence your voice, in darkness your form, we higher who see you seeking, our shells yearn for your embrace. Beyond teaching us that the cult desired complete assimilation with the void, this tablet also reveals that it was practiced by those in higher strata. This is similar to how Lem describes the ancients in Hollownest. Inspired or mad, those ancient bugs, they devoted their worship to no lord, or power, or strength, but to the very darkness itself. But how could something so deep within the land be known by those above? Well, if the snails originally lived in the abyss and interacted with the void, we also know they lived in the upper strata. Throughout Pharloom, we can find snail fossils, many of them having turned into a metallic substance. The Caretaker confirms this, as he refers to his ancestors as the many who have called these lands their own. While I do not believe that the snails created the Void Cult, they probably played a role in the ancient culture's discovery of the substance. I will discuss more of the differences between shamanism and the cult in my next video. But there was more to the religion of this era than just void. Let's take a quick look at the strata of Pharloom. If we take note of the main styles of foundational fossils throughout the land, we see that Pharloom is made up of 6 distinct regions. The bottommost is the abyss, as I have mentioned, is mostly made of snails within snails. The next layer includes the bone lands, deep docks, and far fields, along with a scattering within western Pharloom. The fossils here vary and blend into one another, but are distinctively conglomerate, made up of many different creatures and layers that cross one another in curious ways. They share almost the same composition as the fossils of the 5th layer. Hunter's March is a different perspective of the fossil record. The area was burrowed by the scar, which is why it features such unusual shapes and holes. Grey Moor is a large, empty cavern made up of what appears to be barnacle-like fossils similar to the Voltfern. Mount Fay, the Blasted Steppes, Sands of Karak, Wormways, and some of the Mosslands share many fossils with the 2nd layer, including a large number of worm fossils. The rest of the map, including Shellwood, Wisp Thicket, Verdania, Sinner's Road, Bilewater, the Citadel, Cradle, and the Path to the Nameless Town, all feature roly-poly fossils. They may be the prehistoric ancestors of the common bugs of Pharloom. Understanding these layers will be important in piecing together later eras, but also give us some provenance to artifacts of the past. Throughout layers 5 and 6, one can find the remains of tall black pillars. They also appear in Pharloom Bay in the Sea of Sorrows DLC, as we can see them in the trailer behind the pyre. They appear in fewer numbers in a couple of lower areas, including some of distant far fields, and the tunnel where you battled the Craggler. They have a very distinct look about them, and if you take the time to search for them, you will notice several throughout the game. They make up most of the Blasted Steppes, the Putrefied Ducks, and the background of Bilewater. Horizontally, their range spans from Mount Fay and the Watcher on the Edge to Verdania and far fields. At lowest they appear in the entrance of the Wormways, and at highest the Putrefied Ducks, although they likely loomed where the Citadel now stands. In Shellwood, we can clearly see where one of the towers has been taken away to make space for the gears of the underworks. These pillars are the remains of an ancient civilization that ruled over most of Pharloom. We can determine this a few ways. First, these pillars appear in the prince's memories of free Verdania, which means that they were not built by the Citadel. Second, in the Wisp Thicket, we can see that the Citadel built some wooden grating within the ruins of one of the large pillars, implying that they were already in ruins by the time the Citadel began building. Third, because they span so many lands, we can rule out that they were built by the Karak. Although Khan conquered half of Pharloom, we know that Verdania was free and independent at the time when Grandmother Silk arrived. This means that the pillars must have been built by a previous civilization to both Verdania and the Karak. I've compared the pillars to the architecture of the Void Cult in the Abyss, but I'm not convinced that they are from the same culture. The black pillars are also distinct from the Weaver architecture and the Citadel architecture, including some of the stone pillars and walls throughout far fields. However, they are completely missing from Grey Moor. Between the lack of pillars and the type of fossils, I think that it is very likely that in this ancient time, Grey Moor was a large body of water. But there may have been even another kingdom in Pharloom's past. When Hornet gathers enough mask shards to bring her health up to 10, the mask in the inventory reads, "An ancient mask carved from cold, pale ore. The mask protects the wearer, guarding their shell against damage." Those who played Hollow Knight will remember pale ore as the rare metal used to strengthen the knight's nail. We also know, thanks to Team Cherry confirming it, that the pale ore is connected to pale beings. There is no information on how ore becomes pale, but the knight finds it twice in what appears to be the remnants of a large, ancient egg, similar in design to the arcane egg. My personal theory is that since we see plenty of evidence of bug corpses turning into metals and becoming shell shards, geo, etc., pale ore is likely a pale being's offcast mineralized into a metal. Now, some of Pharloom's mask shards are found in round, empty shells. However, it does not mean that the masks came from those long-deceased bugs. The Stillkin and Mask Maker all use the same style of shells as Holmes, so the mask shards are as likely to be from one of the deceased bug's corpses as they could be from an ancient bug who once made a home in that shell. Which leads me to an important note. The masks in modern times are considered lucky or defensive items, so much of the provenance is lost or unreliable. In fact, we can't be sure if the bug who lost the mask shard was the original owner, but we can piece together some vague details. In far fields, the two mask shards were likely worn or carried by an ancient bug who was eaten by a larger bug who was then fossilized. I think that these are most likely to have been on their original owners due to the way eras align, but there is no being sure. The most unusual shards are found in Mount Fay. One is found buried in a stone at the very top of Bright Vein, and the other is found in the ruins of an ancient pillar just outside the Bell Bench. These are the two that caused me to believe that the makers of the masks probably lived around the era of the pillars. It makes no sense for a mask shard to have been left in the pillar by someone in more modern times. I see two ways it could have arrived in the pillar. The first is that one of the bugs constructing the pillar had lost the shard during its construction. The second is that an even more ancient bug had lost the shard on the mountain and it was already in the stone that the builders used. I tend to lean a little bit more with the former, only because dating them earlier would have put them in even earlier eras of Pharloom's history, possibly in prehistoric eras. While certainly plausible, it really does seem like structured civilization began after certain layers of fossils formed, as the black pillars and ancient abyss structures are built atop fossils but not covered by them. The second Mount Fay shard is encased in stone deep within Bright Vein. Again, it could have been within the stone when the mountain formed. Another option is that an ancient bug climbed to the top and it caved in. The only other cause could be a volcanic event that pushed the shard or bug wearing it up Bright Vein. This is possible, as Fayforn did not arrive at the mountain until a later era. I will talk about her in the next video. The whole reason I bring up masks is because of the tie to pale beings. The existence of pale ore in a time long before silk indicates that there was a previous pale being in Pharloom. Jubilana actually gives us a hint of this in her shop description of the mask shard. Part of an ancient mask, or a fractured shard of someone's visage. With the full thing, you'd be better able to protect your shell. The word visage refers to a person's face or expression. Because Jubilana specifically implies it is different than a mask, the appearance seems to be the focus of her statement. I interpret this as the masks were specifically carved to look like a particular face. If you compare the completed mask to the masks of most other bugs, including those made by the mask maker, it is very clearly carved with certain features in mind. You can see what looks like leaves or wings in the wrappings of what looks like a turban and a banded gem in its forehead. To me, this is evidence that not only was there a pale being in the past, but that either a god or someone else was revered through these masks. And if you are wondering, the current mask maker most likely did not make these masks. The mask makers are mortal bugs, and when he sees Hornet's mask, he says, "A fine face yours, not of my work, not of this kingdom's craft, not now at least." It certainly seems to imply that he was not the first mask maker in Pharloom. He is very familiar with Grandmother Silk and the Weaver's histories, meaning that the previous mask maker probably died off before their arrival. However, similar to the ancient masks, he does use a pale lacquer to seal the bone so they can gleam bright. This points to a long-standing tradition where masks are supposed to be pale, but the answer as to why isn't completely clear. I will cover more of the Void Cult and the implications of early pale beings in the next video, but I felt it was important to cover at the beginning, as there is no mention of the ancient pale being anywhere in the land. We have to ask then, what became of the first pale god, or gods? I believe the answer lies in future eras, as they reveal the true impact of the Void on the spirituality of Pharloom. But as powerful as I believe the void was in those ancient times, its hold did not last forever. The answer to its fall lies in the marrow, the deep docks, and the far fields, and they are difficult to miss. The Void Cult likely ended with a volcanic event that forced a layer of magma between the upper crust and the abyss, blocking bugs from descending to worship. Metalwork was still in its early technological development, so there was no means for the Void Cult to descend through such intense heat. The massive shaft that runs from Bone Bottom to the Blasted Steps most likely existed before this event, as we can see the black pillars built along its sides. The shaft from Far Fields into Greymoor, on the other hand, have only Citadel-era architecture around the shaft, meaning that it could have been created in the blast. In addition, there seems to have been a mass extinction of small to moderately sized bugs in the fossil record of the second level. While traveling through Pharloom, mostly the Marrow and the Deep Docks through Far Fields, one can see several fossilized creatures in the strata. Upon closer inspection, one fossil looks like the mask of a gloomsack. The holes are oddly shaped and do not look like the faces of an ordinary bug. These fossils are found most commonly in the lower strata of Pharloom, but there is one instance of a mask fossilized at the foot of the Blasted Steps. However, you can see other masks beside them, which also appear squished in the sediment. Thus, I can't say for certain if they are gloomsacks, though some of the masks are certainly unusual. From their size and the way they are layered atop and around other foundational fossils, I tend to think that these were fossilized later than the rest. The clusters are also quite scattered, rather than being made up of a concentrated layer like some of the other fossils in the strata. Thus, I believe that they were likely set during this volcanic event, which may explain why they can be found in so many places, from the Blasted Steps to Far Fields. While the exact details are lost to time, we can settle on two facts with a fair bit of confidence. Magma disrupted access to the abyss, and unique ancient bugs appeared to have died off in a mass extinction event. Both contributed to the end of the Void Cult. But the volcanic event did more than end the cult. It created a new way of life. Over the layers of foundational fossils are another type of fossil completely, those of massive beasts able to rival and surpass the size of the ancient snails. These are the bones of the beasts, the dominant powers that ruled the Second Era. Many of their bones make up the pathways through the marrow. Shell spines serve as bridges over flowing magma. In Far Fields and Hunter's March, their corpses are converted into homes for the Scar. The sheer size of these beings could have rivaled the pale worm in some instances. But most important of all, their shells were strong enough to have survived the magma, just as they do in the present. At the time Hornet enters Pharloom, the last of these beasts is the Beastfly. Fully grown into the savage Beastfly, he is able to survive lava and attacks by throwing his huge bulk at his enemies. The era of the beast was much of the same, a primal battle of survival of the fittest, nature in its purest, brutal form. In the Beast Chapel, Hornet can play and needle in by the corpse of one of these beasts and hear its memories. They say, "Remember our foes, our food, life, death, nature." The chapel was made by the Scar probably as the Age of Beasts dwindled to an end, and is the clearest cultural record of this era. The Scar themselves appear to be a civilization born out of this age, as they make their weapons, armor, masks, and homes from the bones of those who came before, even after metalwork has been discovered. While certain acts, like displaying masks on a spike, point to the Scar using bones as a sign of their conquest and strength, the chapel reveals another side of their culture. In general, chapels in Pharloom function as places to honor the deceased. I will cover the chapels in more detail as they are built over the years, but the most common trait among them is the prominence of a corpse set to represent those who came before. In the case of the Scar, they honor not an ant, but a great beast. Although they have fallen, the Scar revere the power the beast once had, a clear sign as to how the Second Era impacted not only the physical life of Pharloom, but its spiritual life. In fact, the Scar make their living out of the bones of these ancient creatures, making the Beast Chapel not only a place of reverence, but of thanks. Without the beasts, the scars would not have the homes or be the bugs they are today. But the beasts influenced more than the scar. They dramatically shifted the values of Pharloom. For once, something was proven stronger than the ancient powers. Is it any wonder that after a mass extinction event that separated them from the void, that bugs would abandon it entirely and follow the ways of the creatures who survived? In an age where you had to kill or be eaten, the values of power and strength became more prominent by necessity. However, the beasts that ruled the land would not live forever, and Pharloom was ripe for change. Eventually, the number of beasts waned, and they became the next layer of fossils as the land burst forth into new life. Thank you for listening to part 1 of Pharloom's religious history. The other parts are in the works, so if you enjoyed it, please consider subscribing, descending dark that like button, and sharing the video with other Hollow Knight fans. What are your thoughts on the timeline so far? Do you have any wild theories about Void or the nature of the first pale beings in Pharloom? What are your thoughts about the fossil record? Feel free to make responses to this timeline. Lore building is most fun when discussed with others. If you felt like something was left out of this era, more than likely I will cover it later. Stay tuned, and thanks again for visiting the Aether Vivarium.